Okay, so this is going to be just a quick demo on how to use Starnet++. I believe this is version 2. So we're going to open up the program here. And this is probably about the simplest program ever in astrophotography processing, because all you really need to do is just kind of browse for the file. Just go to the folder where your linear image or the image that you want to create a starless version is, and just load that in. And the other thing is to make sure that you rename the output file, and make sure that that output file is directed. Usually I make that go to the same folder where the source file is, but I'll just rename this starless at the end. And from there, you're just going to click run, and Starnet is going to open the Starnet console, and it's just going to kind of do its thing. And I'm going to kind of speed through this. I won't make you sit through this process, but it's usually fairly quick. It only takes maybe just a few minutes to complete. A couple of things to take note is that Starnet only accepts 16-bit TIFF files, and it does seem to help to use full color images. There's really no advantage to doing this on like a per channel basis. It seems to work better on the full color images. So there's not a whole lot of support on the Starnet website. It is just incredibly scaled down. There's a few tips and tricks in there. There's not a whole lot of support there, but it really doesn't need it. It just kind of does its own thing here. And so we'll just let this go ahead and run through the process. Starnet has really been a game changer in astrophotography processing. Whenever I produce a starless version, say like of a nebula, it allows me to kind of get a better look and feel of that particular layer, and I can go in and make adjustments in Camera Raw or Photoshop much easier. You can kind of see the detail in the image a little bit better, in contrast to all the stars that have a tendency to kind of distract the eye from a lot of the very subtle details that might be in a nebula image. You'll see a lot of completely starless versions of astrophotography on AstroBin and other websites that have, star galleries. They're becoming quite popular. Okay, so Starnet has finished here, and it has exported the file to the folder that we wanted. So we're just going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to take a quick look at our starless version here. So I'm going to highlight this in Adobe Bridge and then just click preview, and here we see the starless version. It creates just a nice soft image, and if you want to contrast and compare it to the star version, you can I'll highlight both of them here at the same time and then click preview to see them side by side. So you can still see a little bit of gradients and things like that in the image, but we can take care of that later. But what I usually do, my first process is I'll open this in Camera Raw, and there's a lot of different things that we can do here, but most of these changes are going to be very subtle. A lot of times I might adjust like the contrast slider or the darks slider, sometimes the clarity. For the most part here, what we're really going to focus on is the color vibrance and the color saturation, maybe a little bit of the exposure value, but really this step is more about the color and the background noise that is in the image. So just kind of play around with these figures. Each image is going to be different. There's no set values here that you really need to target. Just kind of go by eye here. Once you find these initial settings that you want, you might want to zoom in and check the noise on it. Say if you want to go in and do a little bit of noise reduction, just raise up the luminance value a little, and you might need to raise up the luminance detail to retain some of the details in that original image. There are a few gradients here, but we'll take care of that part later. So we're going to accept these changes here, and we're going to open this up in Photoshop. And generally, once I have the image open in Photoshop, I'll go in and I'll duplicate this particular layer. That way it's a non-destructive edit. I'll click OK there. And then I'm going to go to Filter, down to Pro Digital Software, and then Astro Flat Pro, which is a third-party plugin. And there's only just a few settings here, just 3 sliders, and usually these are set to 20, 20, 20 as far as the values for smoothness, edge cleaning, and dark noise removal here. But again, kind of like you did in Camera Raw, or maybe you're working in Adobe Lightroom, just kind of play around with these values. There are no set values, and you can do check with before and after with your preview switch here. But just kind of play with the values, and then when you're happy with the result, get a nice smooth background there. We're just going to accept these values and click OK. You want to zoom into the image. Just kind of check out. There, you might see a few stars, very, very faint stars that it missed, but those are rarely an issue. So from here, we're going to go back to Bridge, and we're also going to open up the starred version, and we're going to duplicate this layer. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can copy and paste it, or you can just duplicate this layer. And I like to do this because I'll rename this layer Stars. Click OK to accept that, and I'm going to kind of drag this down to where it's over top of the starless version, and drag my stars version on top of that one. And then I'm going to highlight all of these layers here, click Edit and Auto Align Layers, click OK, and Photoshop will it does a pretty good job at aligning the layers, and sometimes you might see a little bit of tilt or rotation that you can easily just crop that out. So we'll go ahead and do that here. Get rid of these white edges. Just barely kind of cropping these edges, and accept that. And that's looking better. Oop, there's actually one more edge. I need to clear that or crop that, and accept that. And now we've got the ability to have the starred version on top of the starless, and we can adjust the opacity slider according to how many stars we want to show up in the image. And this will be different for every image. In some images you might not want any stars, and some you might want almost 90% opacity. But just it's kind of a personal preference thing. I usually, for images like this, darker nebulas, I'll go in and play with some of the blending modes. Sometimes you can have the color and contrast of the nebula itself stand out a little better this way. I think normal is going to be fine for this particular image, and I'm just going to drop down the opacity just a little bit here. Just kind of find a happy medium. If you need to do any other adjustments like levels adjustments here, this is a good opportunity to do that. I'm going to darken the skies here and just slightly brighten some of the highlights in the image, just to give more of a natural blending feel to the starred and starless version. And that pretty much covers it. From here it's mostly just personal preference, and just some of that edge cleanup and gradient removal from there, and that will take care of the Starnet demo.